Hello and welcome to a new episode of Literature Snacks. It's Christmas time, so what better occasion to talk about Charles Dickens' A Christmas Carol. So the episode of today is about Charles Dickens' A Christmas Carol. Charles Dickens was born in 1812 at Portsea in England. He was born by middle-class parents who had loads of debts because of their living beyond their means. He worked as a law clerk and journalist, and as a journalist he explored the miserable condition of workers during the Industrial Revolution. In fact, in that period, many inventions in textile industries were made and factories appeared in England. People tended to abandon countryside to go to the cities and find a job. English society in that period was divided in two different groups. Factory owners, who were rich beyond imagination, and workers. The group of workers included men, women, and unfortunately also children. They were paid absolutely very little, and they lived and worked in terrible conditions. But the most important thing at the time was to show how great the British economy was. Therefore, the terrible condition of the cities, such as air pollution, the spread of disease, and the extreme situation of the poorer suburbs, was left aside and ignored by the society. Dickens was one of the journalists who was committed to bring these situations to light, with novels such as Oliver Twist and A Christmas Carol, which were published in 1838 and in 1843. The book A Christmas Carol is divided in 5 staves instead of chapters. A stave is the noun for stanza in Christmas carols. The protagonist is Ebenezer Scrooge. He is mean and selfish, and he is overly attached to money. The book opens on Christmas Eve in Scrooge's counting house, where he is counting his money. We see him turning down his nephew's invitation for a Christmas party, and we see him rejecting the request of 2 gentlemen asking for contribution for their charity, who's taking care of the poor. We get the picture that he is completely insensitive to the tradition of Christmas as a day of sharing, giving, and be good. Later that night, in his house, Scrooge receives the visit of his former partner, Jacob Marley, who died 7 years ago. The spirit of Marley has come to warn him that their lifestyle of greediness and selfishness has condemned him to wander around the earth, crawling with heavy chains and no hope for heaven. He came to warn Scrooge to change his attitude, or he would suffer the same fate. Marley informed Scrooge that he would receive the visit of 3 more ghosts that night and advised him to listen to them carefully. At midnight, Scrooge is awakened and visited by the ghost of Christmas past, who shows him a different past Christmas where Scrooge evolved from being a boy capable of love to a man ruined by greediness. At 1 a.m., Scrooge is visited by the ghost of Christmas present. It shows him how Christmas is passed pretty much everywhere, from his nephew Fred to Bob Cratchit, his clerk, who has a very delicate son, Tiny Tim, that might die if the situation won't change. As night grows older, the ghost takes Scrooge into a desolate expanse where he finally leaves Scrooge alone, and he glimpses a hooded figure approaching him. The ghost of Christmas yet to come doesn't speak, but shows Scrooge the effect of his death, where people are relieved of it either because they own him money or because they finally got possession of his money and his belongings. The ghost also shows Scrooge CRATCHIT's family and how they are devastated by the death of their child, Tiny Tim. Scrooge is at this point overwhelmed by fear, terror, and desperation. He promises to honor Christmas Day and to change his attitude immediately. He wakes up in his bedroom on Christmas Day and he is glad to have a second chance. He goes out and makes amends for what he did at the very beginning of the story. He sends a big turkey to CRATCHIT, apologizes to the charities gentleman and promises huge donations for the poor. And he goes to his nephew's Fred Christmas party. With time passing, Scrooge remains true to his word by giving Bob a pay rise and keeping a little Christmas spirit every day with him. A Christmas Carol is a clear example of allegoric writing, where Scrooge is the symbol of greed and apathy, and Cratchit is a symbol of people suffering because of greedy society. In fact, the book was written in the middle of the post-industrial revolution, where England experienced an economic boost at the great expense of the working classes. The sentence, "Aren't they workhouses? Aren't they prison?" said by Scrooge in answer to the two gentlemen of the charity asking for money for the poor, donations for the poor, is an attempt of Dickens to strike against the poor laws. The poor laws is a body of laws that was supposed to take care of the needy and the poor, but in reality they forced them to work in workhouses or serve sentences to prison, giving them no opportunity to improve or change their situation. In fact, Dickens' father was indeed imprisoned for debt. Bob Cratchit's family is Dickens' response to Malthus' theory. Now, Malthus was a mathematician who was supporting the poor laws with his theory that stated that population growth could only happen alongside with poverty and starvation, as his theory stated that population grows according to a geometric sequences, while food supplies grow according to an arithmetical sequences. The sentiment of pity that Cratchit and his family evoke into Scrooge and into the reader's heart is a Dickens attempt to remind people that poverty-stricken folks are human beings and not just figures to put into an equation. The biggest highlight in Dickens' A Christmas Carol is the shifting of Christmas elements, detaching from the Christian idea of self-denial, renunciation, and emotional withdrawal to ideas of caring and sharing, emotional, spiritual, and monetary. Now, the birth of Christ or religious element are not even mentioned in the novel. What the first two ghosts show to Scrooge is all about being happy with the people you love. It's nothing to do with the Christmas nativity. And it's a celebration of Christmas as a triumph of brotherhood and communal good spirit. Now, the Christmas tradition that England has now had started to appear exactly during the Victorian Age, where Dickens wrote. Things like Christmas cards, Christmas tree, that was a tradition imported from Germany for Prince Albert, who was Queen Victoria's husband, as he was German. Elements like elaborate house decorating or even exchanging gifts and presents started to take place literally at that time. Christmas carols were revived and popularized. So, in reality, Dickens didn't invent the Victorian Christmas, but the book helped to popularize and spread the tradition that were developing at the time. The re-education of Scrooge starts with the ghost of Christmas past and Christmas present through memory and empathy, but they culminate with the fear of death instilled by the ghost of Christmas yet to come. This is probably the only Christian element in the book. The ghost is a dark reaper appearance that terrorizes Scrooge without speaking. Heaven or hell are indeed never mentioned in the novel. Marley never speaks of hell, but only of his punishment. Yet, in stave 4, we are reminded of hell and the Christian idea of punishment for not being sharing and caring of others in our terrenal life. It is hard in reality to tell what really prompts Scrooge to change, whether it's the renewed empathy instilled by the first two ghosts or the fear of his destiny instilled by the last ghost. In the closing chapter of the book, stave 5, Scrooge literally escapes hell, symmetrically changing his behavior to the people he encounters in stave 1, as he is giving to Cratchit and to the two gentlemen from the charity. The book ends with an optimistic note that leaves the reader with hope and, in Dickens' intent, probably re-educated. But it's just a hope that will need a long time to become true. The situation of poverty that Dickens reports will still remain for a very long time after publishing the book. Situation in England will change slightly right before World War I, where England enters the war as the most powerful and the richest country in the world, but unfortunately will come out from World War I as one of the poorest countries in the world. Dickens' A Christmas Carol is probably the most famous novel about Christmas. It is wrongly associated with kids' literature. Now, this is pretty much important to keep in mind. A Christmas Carol is not a book for kids. Alice in Wonderland from Carol is a book for kids. The Chronicles of Narnia from C.S. Lewis is another book for kids, popular in English literature. Now, A Christmas Carol should more be associated with post-industrial revolution. In fact, it has been written during the Hungry 40s, where Britain was experiencing an economic depression. Unemployment was growing exponentially, and 2 consecutive harvests had failed, and the price of everyday food was growing beyond the reach of many. Dickens was more concerned with the situation of poverty in English society. He was more concerned with this than with Christmas. He uses Christmas as a message to re-educate all society to take more care of the poor and to not consider them just an equation or something that should be ignored because it's not part of the society. He was more concerned with the human thing, not exactly with Christmas tradition. But anyway, we still cite Christmas Carol. It is one of the most quoted literature book during Christmas. There have been made several film adaptations. And we still use A Christmas Carol of Charles Dickens to symbolize Christmas. Now, thank you very much for being with us. Okay, we want to wish you a very Merry Christmas, even if the situation is what it is. Okay, we wanted to work on A Christmas Carol just to send another message of hope, because as if Christmas Carol is more connected to the situation of poverty and the problem that England was experiencing at the time with their society, it is still a big message of hope. So we wanted to share with you a message of hope. Wish you a very Merry Christmas as much as you can. I know that this is a Christmas that would pass in loneliness, or anyway, we can't see all the people that we normally see in Christmas, but we wanted to keep hope again. Okay, so remember that Christmas is always an occasion for sharing, caring, and as Dickens says, situation where you can renew your empathy toward others. and set aside hateful sentiments. Thank you for being with us. Remember that if you want to get more video about literature snacks, please subscribe to the channel. If you like this video, like the thumb up. Please do not forget to like our Facebook page and our Instagram page. This is our email address if you wanted to request any course of English literature, English. We are delivering courses online and courses in present as much as we can. Thank you very much, and again, Merry Christmas.